Chris Landry. Welcome into the game. I hope you're having a great Wednesday afternoon.
Ryan, it's a great afternoon. Always great to be with you, bud. So ready to talk football, man.
Let's go back. Florida State, Alabama. What was your big takeaway from your perspective?
Well, great defensive performance by Alabama. Expected. Great special teams performance outside of kicking, which is something we'll get into. That listen, doesn't hurt you as long as you're not in close games. It could rear its ugly head down the road if you get into kind of the playoff atmosphere. But something that needs to improve upon. Offensively, I thought they did a great job against an outstanding defensive front, blocking it well, running the football well. Love their backs, love their depth. The passing game's a work in progress. There's no question about that. I think that it must be understood that in a game like this, there's not going to be a lot of chances taken because the only way you would put the game in peril is to turn the football over, to make mistakes. So I think they were working on efficiency. I think that what you're seeing is a combination of, getting back to, and we talked about this all summer, didn't we, about getting back to Alabama football, power football, coming off the line of scrimmage and controlling and dominating the line of scrimmage. Did that, check that. And I think that what they want to be able to do is be able to use some of the run-pass options that they have. And if you watch the game, and what I did when I broke it down is, it was very simple. Man coverage, first guy covered, Jalen takes off and run. Against man coverage, you don't account for the guy, then you've got a runner, you got some big plays there. Against zone coverage, then it's going to work the check down, get rid of the football. So that is going to be, I think, how they're going to break it in and go forward. How much they're going to develop the passing game, listen, I think it'll depend. I think the goal is to become more proficient getting the football, the different weapons in the passing game as needed against perhaps national playoff caliber opponents. But they're not going to be a team that's going to want to throw the football and spread the football around and throw it a whole bunch. But they're going to want to go vertical when people overplay the run. And I think we saw the big play after getting behind. The big play came right off of play action. They get the safety moved into the box, and that's what you're going to see. So I think what you see is a lot of what you're going to see going forward with the possible, more development with the passing game. And, the one thing I'd like to see them be able to do is, if you go back even under Kiffin, they have taken the great receiver, the Amari Cooper, now the Calvin Ridley. We will motion him and get him open. You find him. And it has been less about, finding the open guy. That's why we'll create the matchup for you. We'll simplify it for you, quarterback. Now, I think maybe going forward, because I think they've got a lot of weapons, the way I think they can be more effective in the passing game. And I think that that is going to be a process, but they're not going to do it at the expense of trying to bring people back into the game by taking too many chances in the passing game, if that makes sense.
How can a quarterback and an offensive coordinator help out an offensive line that's still trying to gel together?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, I think that they're an effective run-blocking unit, and I think that one of the things you can do by formation, you can, deploy people out of the box so that you can have better advantages in the run game in terms of blocking numbers and blocking angles. So that's basically the one thing that you can do. The other is the run threat of the quarterback. When you can throw the potential boot and waggles, it gets the defenses having to protect the perimeter, and that gives, again, better blocking angles and better numbers for the offensive line to be able to handle. And I think the less numbers you got in the box, it's simple. It's less guys to block. But two, it's less dealing with combination blocks that becomes very difficult, that have to be communicated. And when you're gelling, that's where the breakdowns usually come from. It's not just being beat physically. It's mostly being beat from an assignment standpoint, and you get paralyzed a little bit by making mistakes assignment-wise when you have too many, combinations that you have to adjust to in the box blocking.
Chris, in the limited plays that we saw Jalen Hurts throwing the football, did you see an improvement that you would have liked to seen in his passing ability?
I think it's been more. I think that it was probably more similar to what we've seen. I think the kid can throw the football better than maybe people give him credit for. I think the thing to keep in mind is that if you're going to be the type of offense Alabama is, you don't have to be overly precise. Again, you can run the post route with the safety vacated because then you just lead the receiver. And sure, the better throw will give you a better chance of scoring off the pass, or you'll still get a big play. The worst-case scenario is you get a big play because it's not what we call a stick throw into a tight window. I think his ability to run and the Alabama's ability to run power is going to dictate options and mismatches in coverage. I don't think he needs to be a great passer for them to be a great team and a great offense, and for him to be a great quarterback. I think he can accomplish those things. I don't know that he's ever going to be that type of a quarterback, but can he be effective enough? Can you win a national championship with him? Absolutely. I think it can happen, and I think he can get better. And when it's all said and done, he may end up being a better passer than even I think he can be.
You know, we're talking about practice reports right now just coming in, and I'll share this with you. Deshaun Hand working with the outside backers. I assume that's probably just some run support there. They worked LeBron Ray, which is a defensive lineman, yesterday. But Deshaun Hand working with outside backers, trying to fill the void of losing two of those guys for the season.
Well, absolutely, and it was – maybe the toughest loss. Of course, nothing like what Florida State went through losing Francois, but there's no question. I could absolutely see that as they stand up guys and they'll probably reduce their tackle inside, and then that gives them the ability to set the edge in the run game on early downs. Makes a lot of sense, and Deshaun is certainly someone that I think is capable of handling some of that, and I think a little bit underrated in some of his zone drops. So, it makes a lot of sense. And what you want to do and to try to cross-train guys, it gives you a better position to put your best players on the field in that situation.
Chris, let me spend a little time talking about defensive backs here for just a couple of minutes. Obviously, you know what you're going to get with Minkah Fitzpatrick, Ronnie Harrison, Anthony Averett at times had a really good game. But I'm really shocked at Levi Wallace coming in, a true walk-on. He told the story. He's got a very inspirational story. His dad encouraged him and said, go walk on. I think you've got the ability. His dad ends up passing away. He, inspired by what his dad told him, he walked on to the University of Alabama. Then you look out on the football field and not just playing, but playing a significant role and may have graded out as one of the top defensive backs on that unit. Levi Wallace, a young man that walked on, now earned a scholarship. Pretty solid for Alabama in that secondary on Saturday.
Boy, did he play well. I think he was more than solid. I thought he played outstanding ball. And, it is a great story because in the land of five stars, you just don't see that happening, or you don't see that. You see it happening a lot, actually, but not at a place like Alabama. To see a guy have that opportunity, and it's a credit to the coaching and to this young man taking to coaching and working hard and being dedicated. If you understand and are committed to playing good technique, you can play. You don't have to be the elite athlete in the secondary. You have to be assignment sound. In fact, if you're an elite athlete and you freelance, you're going to have less chance of playing and being effective for Nick Saban than somebody that's going to do it right consistently, because it's about using the right hand and the right leverage point consistently to play that position. And I thought he was outstanding. And technique-wise, he was really good, graded out very well.
Chris, let me ask you, when you have inferior competition like Fresno State, like Colorado State, you got to go Vanderbilt on the road, you come back, play Ole Miss, what do you take this opportunity to do if you're Nick Saban and that coaching staff to get ready? Because you know what it's like in Tuscaloosa. It's all about championships, trying to get your team to play championship-caliber football and improve upon some of these mistakes. How do you get your team to go through the emotions, Fresno, Colorado State, and Vanderbilt?
Well, I think that's real simple, and that's something that's been a staple of why Alabama's been great. Because, you can't win a championship if you don't improve every week to your standard in games like the ones that are coming up. So the way you do it is there's a challenge. There is a challenge with competition. The guys that are going to play are the guys that perform the best, that practice the best, that do the things that they're taught to do the best. And there's a saying that I always have, you got to play through an opponent sometimes. You have to play to your standard. And you're not playing Fresno State. You're playing yourself to the standard that you're being asked to play. And there's a little trick that you can do in coaching that is what I call playing through an opponent. And what it is, you can introduce a couple of things each week into each one of those opponents. Not so much against Vanderbilt, but the others, where you can put a couple of LSU things or Auburn things that you will see down the road. Maybe a coverage, it may be a stunt, it may be a different pass combination that this team that they're playing will not see, but you practice it so that it doesn't become new to you when you are preparing that week that you're playing that opponent. And I think, but you don't introduce it that way. You don't say, "Hey, these guys don't do this, but we're going to do this when we get ready to play Auburn or LSU." You don't do it that way. You show them what you want done, and it's a way to kind of practice with getting something accomplished down the road, and you do it now. And I think it's an opportunity to be able to do some of those things. For example, on top of that, you can maybe develop the passing game a little bit more. Because if you were to make a mistake, it is less likely to cost you a chance to maybe lose a game or being in a position to lose it, as opposed to the same mistake happening against Florida State week 1. So I think it affords you tremendous opportunity to develop and get better. And to me, while it will not be recognized this way by fans and media, how well you handle these games and how well you get better competing against yourself and to the standard that you're trying to, hey, we're going to be a good passing team by the end of the year, and we're going to have to do A, B, C, D, and E in the next several weeks. That will dictate in large part to whether they're going to be good enough if they have to play another, say, a really good team. Let's say they end up playing a good offensive team that they've got to score more points in the playoffs. They need to be prepared for that. And this is when you do it, and this is how you do it. And I think that's why these games are important. Because winning them, the winning part, yeah, I know fans will take that for granted. But how you go about getting better, that's what your job is as a coach and as players to do.
Chris, when you look at, we're talking with Chris Landry, LandryFootballcom, the report right here on Tide 102.9 and 100.9, the home of Alabama sports. Chris, let me ask you, when you look at DeAndre Francois, it's a quick reminder that teams have got to have a backup quarterback ready to go. How will Nick Saban use this next couple of weeks to get Tua Tagovailoa ready? Because we do play a contact sport, and just like we saw Saturday night, one play away and you're to your backup guy.
Well, I think it kind of to piggyback off of what I just said, I think that is why you've got to play well, and I think you've got to take advantage of this opportunity in the next several weeks where you can get some young guys to play. And as it relates to the quarterback position, absolutely. But every other position, as we're talking about losing a couple of linebackers and doing some different things, well, that means they're going to have to get next man up and get them ready to go. So I think the answer would be that they're going to work a package for Tua. I think will be implemented at a given point, a design point, and then I think there will also be some integrals into the game when they feel that the game is pretty much in hand on terms of how the game is going, where it's the time left in the game and possessions remaining and the flow of the game and how successful they are getting things done in all three facets. That'll determine how much action you can get. Now, it's also important, though, that as you're correct, you want to prepare for if Jalen goes down. As we kind of just talked about, Jalen also needs a lot of work in the passing game himself. So it's going to be a combination of how many reps can you get and how much can you work on your passing game with both. And I think that is something that's going to need to be determined, and I can guarantee you being discussed on how they want to do it going forward here against Fresno, against Colorado State, and so forth before they get into at least that Ole Miss, A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU stretch.
Chris, let me go back to some other college football outside of Tuscaloosa. What grabbed your eye in this first big weekend of action?
Florida's inept offense, and particularly play up front in the offensive line, was really concerning and a problem that they're going to have to get fixed in a hurry. I thought Michigan's defensive front just completely outmanned them there. Very impressed with South Carolina's offense against a very good North Carolina State defensive front. I thought LSU played very well defensively. Well, they played great defensively, and BYU's not real explosive on offense, but to not allow opponent across midfield was impressive. I thought Virginia Tech really did a nice job, and as did West Virginia. I think Virginia Tech's getting a little bit better offense, and that's an improving program there. I thought Tennessee got away with one, and credit for them hanging tough after getting basically whipped at the line of scrimmage the entire game, pulling that out. I think Clemson looked really explosive on offense. Can't wait to watch them. And Auburn, I broke down the Auburn-Georgia Southern game, and really as I watched it, got a number of monitors, Ryan, when I'm watching games and looking at games on Saturday. So I tape them, but sometimes I see things, but I don't get to see enough of it. And I was surprised. I had the impression just off of just spot watching that Auburn was playing really well. When I broke down the tape, I was not as impressed. I thought Jarrett Stidham, while you see the ability to make plays, he missed a lot of opportunities, and they're going to have to play a lot better offensively if they're going to have the same type of success against Clemson this week. Georgia looked good against Appalachian State. Nice win. Very excited about seeing what they do against Notre Dame in South Bend. As the defense is starting to get not that deep yet, but is starting to get where Kirby likes it. And Fromm, I thought, played with a lot of poise, and I want to see what he can do on the road. So going to be a lot of fun. How about South Carolina, Missouri? Missouri couldn't stop anybody. What an embarrassing defensive performance, but they're going to be a load to handle for anybody with their offensive attack. And then Oklahoma, Ohio State is going to be a real fun matchup this week, as will Stanford, USC. So we'll learn a lot. It's going to be a great weekend, and we'll learn as we do every year. Every week we learn a little bit more. I tell you what, Arkansas and TCU is going to be maybe an under-a-radar game that's going to be a lot of fun, and they're in that early window, that afternoon window, before all the big games are in the evening.
Let me go back to Texas A&M and UCLA. Mm-hmm. How do you rebound if you're Kevin Sumlin to try to get that team to believe in what you're doing?
Well, let me say this. The way you do it, you've got to really challenge your team and yourself that you've got a lot of season left. But the bigger picture to me is the concern about their offense and their style and how can they modify things because, Ryan, it's been consistent. Their offense is based on up-tempo and getting numbers and angles in the running game and doing it with tempo. So when they get up 44-10, their inability to be able to eat clock and run the football effectively, but do it in a huddle. Take every 5-8 seconds, every snap that you can give, gives your defense a chance to rest and have a chance to be successful. They don't do that. So what happens is you keep an opponent in the game a lot longer than you should be. And, look, not every week you're going to face a Josh Rosen in a UCLA offense, but they gave them a chance to get in. It wasn't aided by turnovers. In 19 minutes, Texas A&M gave up scoring drives of 75, 85, 96, 74, and 66 yards. I have a real concern about that, and when talking with Kevin about it, this is what we do, this is why we're successful. Going up tempo helps us offensively, and he's right, but that's great to score points, but to win games, they can't close people out. And when there's just no lead that's big enough. They'll win their share of games, but that loss and the way they lost it, they're going to have to go through a hellacious run in the SEC this year for Kevin Sumlin to save his job. Because Scott Woodard has already put the gauntlet down that it's not good enough. A&M has now surpassed Texas as the largest athletic budget in the country, and they think of themselves as we're going to buy us, everything we need. and their $9,000 lockers and all that. Look, they believe in, we got to get it done. And right now, that they are really, really frustrated with how that played out.
Chris, this is something, and maybe it's just, I'm not fit the way you are with your football knowledge, the way that you've been around the business. But you talked about hurry up helps that offense. Nick Saban even said it probably right early part of camp. He said, we're a better team when we go up tempo. How is that the case when you talk about just because it seems like everything's sped up a little bit? Is that just giving you less time to think? Why are these teams better when they go up tempo?
Because the defense can't get a line and make adjustments, and you get them off guard. And yes, it is effective, and it works. The problem is when you get a lead and you continue to go up tempo and you're not successful, and you can't turn 44 into 52 into 58, and then you're giving your opponent more chances, more possessions to get in, and your defense is now worn out because there's less interval time between defensive snaps from series to series. So it now becomes, use this analogy, NBA basketball. No defense. Who gets the ball last? Who has the hot shooting night? Well, then it relegates you to the hot team that day, and it mitigates the power that one team has over the other. So in a case of Alabama, yeah, they're a little better when they go up tempo, but they have to be able to throttle it down once you get a lead, to compress the game, to kind of take the air out of it a little bit, and to prevent your opposing offense, the opposing team's offense, to get on the field, and to limit those opportunities. You do that, it's common sense, it's common numbers. Less possessions equal less time to get it done. Now, you have to be able to, when you run with a high possession offense, you got to be able to finish. Georgia Tech completely controlled and dominated the game against Tennessee. But what happened? They couldn't make field goals inside the red zone. So with a lead and domination of 650 yards of offense, they couldn't finish because they couldn't finish in the red zone with field goals and turn the football over twice. So guess what? Tennessee gets a couple of extra possessions, and they can't win it if they don't have those extra possessions. So, both can work, but what I think and what I've always preached in my consulting stuff is you have to have both. You don't need to, be married to two systems, but you have to be able to run a 2-minute offense as well as a 4-minute offense and vice versa. And we have teams that can't run 4-minute offenses. And if you can't run 4-minute offenses, it's going to be difficult to finish. Now, if you can't run 2-minute offenses, you're in trouble if you're down. But the ability to do both, to me, is often the difference between being a good offense and a championship offense.
Chris, take a minute here and talk about your website. Talk about the content that's available right now.
Well, we started it 3 years ago. That's based off of Landry Football Operations, which is a consulting firm that I do consulting work for NFL teams and college programs. We decided, what can we do for the fan, the educated fans that want to learn more about the game as to why it is what it is. So we take them inside the film room. We break down the games to give you an idea of what we saw in the game, how do we anticipate it affecting future games. If it involves players, teams, coaches, schemes, that's what we do inside the film room. We also give you a lot of inside information of what's going on around college programs in the NFL. So we do it both at the NFL and college level. So that's what we do. Obviously, recruiting, the draft, you name it, we cover it all. And right now we're doing something a little special, Ryan, that we're going to continue this throughout the season. If anybody becomes a subscriber, and we got a lot of free information, but if anybody becomes a subscriber, and we got a discount that you can go on the website and get it, 50% off. And if you do that, we'll take 50% of what you pay. So $49.99, we'll take $25, and we'll buy needed supplies for the hurricane victims in Texas. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have some of the similar problems in Florida. It's just our little way of helping on top of what so many other fine people are doing around the country to help these people out. We dealt with the floods in Baton Rouge last year, so knowing firsthand, and we did that there, here, that we wanted to be able to do it to help the folks in Texas. So that's what LandryFootball.com is all about, is has given folks an insight into the game from a coaching and scouting perspective. And we think we can help you enjoy the game a little better. And obviously, you can do something to help folks that are in need right now.